You wouldn't believe this was the same woman who once wore a vial of blood around her neck and kissed her brother on the Oscars red carpet. Angelina Jolie today moves through the world like a shadow of her former self, graceful, diplomatic, and heartbreakingly calm. But behind those serene eyes lies a story carved by rebellion, pain, triumph, and reinvention. She was once Hollywood's most dangerous woman, a wild child, tabloid gold, tattoos, knives, rumors, and men, so many men. Her very presence was a challenge to the industry's polished facade. And yet now, she walks red carpets not as a seductress, but as a humanitarian, a mother of 6, a UN ambassador. The woman who once made headlines for kissing Billy Bob Thornton now makes them for advocating children's rights in war zones. So what happened? How did Angelina Jolie go from chaos to calm, from scandal to sainthood? And more importantly, was this transformation a personal evolution or just Hollywood's most elaborate costume change? Let's trace the journey from the fire to the ashes to the phoenix that rose again. Before she was Angelina Jolie, she was simply Angie Voigt, daughter of Oscar winner Jon Voight and actress Marceline Bertrand, born into Hollywood legacy, but raised in its shadows. Her father's fame cast a long silhouette, but it was her mother who nurtured her artistic soul. Angelina wasn't a child star. She was an outsider looking and observing the world with a sensitivity that would later become her weapon and her wound. Her teenage years were turbulent. Struggles with depression, self-harm, and alienation marked her early life. She didn't fit into the clean-cut Hollywood mold. She wore black, studied embalming, collected knives, and wrestled with inner darkness. But beneath that armor was a relentless hunger for truth, for feeling, for something real. Acting found her, or maybe she hunted it down. Her early roles were magnetic. In Hackers, she was cool and cryptic, a hacker with a heart that beat off rhythm from the mainstream. Then came Foxfire, playing God, Hell's Kitchen films that didn't always succeed commercially, but announced her presence. She wasn't a supporting character in anyone's life. She was the storm. Then came Gia. Her portrayal of Gia Karanji wasn't just a breakout, it was a detonation. Jolie embodied the rise and fall of the supermodel with such ferocity and empathy that audiences were left breathless. The role earned her a Golden Globe and critical acclaim. But more importantly, it put her on the map not as Jon Voight's daughter, but as Angelina Jolie. Her Oscar-winning role in Girl Interrupted only deepened the myth. As Lisa, the sociopath with a wicked grin and bottomless eyes, she stole every scene even from Winona Ryder. She didn't play troubled women, she seemed to speak their native tongue. Off-screen, the legend grew. Her interviews were honest to the point of discomfort. She spoke of mental illness, bisexuality, her strange marriage to Billy Bob Thornton, and yes, the infamous vial of blood. She wasn't trying to shock, she was simply refusing to lie. By the time she took on Lara Croft Tomb Raider, she had become both icon and paradox. An action star who loathed the spotlight, a sex symbol who spoke like a philosopher, a Hollywood darling who moved like an exile. She was electric, and she was playing with fire. But how long can anyone burn that brightly before they begin to dim or change? The shift in Angelina Jolie didn't happen in a single year. It stretched across a decade, a slow shedding of skin, of myth, of self. Her experience filming Beyond Borders planted the first seeds. The film flopped, but the fieldwork left a mark. Jolie began traveling to conflict zones, visiting refugee camps, meeting people whose suffering dwarfed her own. Her humanitarian work was not a stunt, it was salvation. In war-torn places, she found clarity. And then came Mr. and Mrs. Smith, a movie about spies turned lovers that became a global sensation and the catalyst for a media firestorm. Her romance with Brad Pitt eclipsed her career. Tabloids called her a temptress, a homewrecker. But behind the headlines, she was quietly changing. She adopted Zahara, then Pax. She gave birth to Shiloh in Namibia, making a statement about privacy, sovereignty, and identity. Motherhood was no act. It consumed her, defined her. She directed her energy inward to her growing family and outward to the world's broken places. Sudan, Syria, Cambodia. She became a voice not for causes, but for people. The death of her mother in 2007 hit like a wrecking ball. Angelina was close to Marceline, her emotional anchor. The loss marked her face, her posture, her eyes. Then came the most humanizing moment of all. In 2013, she wrote a candid op-ed revealing her double mastectomy after testing positive for the BRCA1 gene. It was a moment of public vulnerability, courage, and control. For a woman once defined by her sensuality, it was a radical act of redefinition. Angelina was no longer the tattooed rebel with a knife collection. She was a woman who knew what it meant to choose survival over image, truth over fantasy, and responsibility over rebellion. Her work reflected this. Films like A Mighty Heart, Changeling, and later Unbroken and First They Killed My Father spoke of suffering, resilience, and human dignity. The shift wasn't a rejection of who she was. It was an embrace of everything she'd become. Today, Angelina Jolie moves through the world like a quiet storm. She speaks less, but says more. She appears rarely, but when she does, it's intentional. Whether addressing the UN, writing essays, or attending film premieres, her presence is calculated yet authentic, like a monarch who has learned the cost of every step. Her style is subdued, minimalist, even regal. Gone are the blood vials and latex dresses. In their place, neutral gowns, tailored suits, and a calm, watchful gaze. She is not chasing roles. She is building legacies. Her children are her core. Each one from a different culture, with their own story and struggles, has been raised under her careful protection. She has often described them as her greatest teachers. She is now a filmmaker who crafts stories about injustice, a philanthropist who funds education initiatives for girls in conflict zones, a professor at the London School of Economics. And yet, the shadows remain. Her divorce from Brad Pitt was long, messy, public. Custody hearings, sealed court documents, and quiet allegations painted a picture of private chaos behind her composed exterior. She never offered gossip, only silence. And in that silence, dignity. Physically, she's transformed again. More angular, more distant. Her laugh, when it escapes, is rare but disarming. Her smile, once wild and wicked, is now small, almost secretive. She doesn't dwell on the past, but it's etched into her body literally. Her tattoos tell her life story, coordinates, mantras, tigers, symbols of rebirth and resilience. In interviews, she chooses her words like a diplomat. She speaks of trauma, strength, femininity not as ideas, but as lived experiences. She's no longer interested in being adored. She's interested in being heard. The fire hasn't gone out, it's just been tamed, reforged. She's not the girl we met in the 92nd, but in many ways, she's still fighting the same battles. Only now, she does it on a global scale, with 6 children at her side and the weight of the world on her shoulders. There's something awe-inspiring about watching someone rewrite their narrative while the whole world watches. Angelina Jolie is no longer the rebel, the siren, the scandal. And yet, all of those past selves live within her. What she's done is rare. She's aged not just gracefully but powerfully. She's taken control of her image, her health, her story. In a business obsessed with reinvention, she evolved instead. Organically, painfully, authentically. Is she more herself now? Maybe. Or maybe she's just more layered, less performative, more protective. She challenges what Hollywood expects of aging women. She dares to be quiet in a culture that demands constant noise. She refuses to be reduced to a role on screen or off. Her journey reveals something profound, that resilience isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's the steady rebuilding of a soul after the world tries to tear it apart. And we are left to ask, do we prefer the Angelina of then, the fire starter, or the Angelina of now, the phoenix who rose from her own ashes? Or maybe it's not about preference. Maybe we're just lucky to have witnessed both. There's a scene in Girl Interrupted where Angelina Jolie's character leans against a wall, eyes half-lidded, dangerous and broken and beautiful. For a generation, that image is burned into memory, an eternal portrait of rebellion. But memories, like film reels, don't age. Somewhere in the archives of pop culture, she's still that girl. the one who refused to be tamed, the one who made Hollywood nervous, the one who carved her name onto her body because ink felt more honest than words. And yet, somewhere else, perhaps in a war-torn refugee camp or a quiet moment with her children, she's also the woman she became, the quiet force, the survivor, the sculptor of her own legacy. There's a kind of poetry in her transformation. Not the kind you write to win awards, the kind you whisper to yourself when no one's watching, the kind that comes from pain and silence and strength that doesn't need to roar anymore. Because time doesn't just change people, it distills them. And in Angelina Jolie, we've seen what it means to endure not just the industry, but the fire of one's own making. Her beauty may have once made her famous, but her endurance is what makes her unforgettable. And maybe that's the real secret of stardom. Not burning out, not fading away, but transforming so completely that we never see the seams. She is no longer the wild girl with the haunted eyes. And yet somehow, she always will be.